the age of empire, when the land of Egypt was ruled by a pharaoh who knew not the legacy of Joseph, a shadow fell upon the descendants of Jacob. The children of Israel, once honored guests, or now slaves, their backs bent under the lash, their spirits crushed by the weight of mortar and brick. A cry of anguish rose from the mud pits of Goshen, a lamentation carried on the desert wind. And the Pharaoh, fearing the growing numbers of his captives, spoke a decree of pure malice. "Every son that is born to the Hebrews," he commanded, "you shall cast into the river." It was a time of terror, a season of weeping. But in the heart of one Levite woman, faith burned brighter than fear. Her name was Jochebed, and when she bore a son, she saw that he was beautiful, a child of promise. For 3 months she hid him, her every breath a prayer, her home a sanctuary of silence. When she could hide him no longer, she did not surrender him to the waters of death, but to the providence of God. She wove an ark of bulrushes, sealing it with tar and pitch, and placed the child within. With a mother's final tear, she laid the tiny vessel among the reeds by the river's bank, his sister Miriam watching from a distance, her heart aflutter with hope and dread. And it came to pass that the daughter of Pharaoh herself came down to the Nile to bathe. She saw the ark among the reeds, and sent her maiden to retrieve it. And when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe was weeping. Compassion moved her heart. "This is one of the Hebrews' children," she said. It was then that Miriam stepped from the shadows, her voice trembling but clear. "Shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." And the girl went and called the child's own mother. Thus, through a plan woven by a divine hand, the child was returned to his mother's arms, to be nursed for a wage from the very house that had condemned him. The princess named him Moses, for she said, "Because I drew him out of the water." He grew in the splendors of the Egyptian court, trained in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, mighty in words and deeds. He was a prince of Egypt, yet the blood of the slaves flowed in his veins, a secret truth that whispered to him in the lonely corridors of the palace. One day, when he had come of age, he went out to his people and looked on their burdens. He saw an Egyptian striking a Hebrew, one of his own kinsmen. A fire, long smoldering, ignited within him. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. He believed his act was a secret, a righteous blow for his people. But the next day he saw 2 Hebrews struggling together. He said to the man in the wrong, "Why do you strike your companion?" But the man thrust him away, saying, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Fear seized Moses. His secret was known. When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, a fugitive prince, his destiny unknown. He sat down by a well, a broken man in a foreign land. There he found a new life, a shepherd's life, and a wife, Zipporah, daughter of the priest Jethro. For 40 years the desert was his home, its silence his teacher, its solitude his crucible. He tended the flocks, the memory of Egypt a fading ember, the call of his people a distant echo. The fire of his youth had cooled, replaced by the quiet patience of the wilderness. He was no longer a prince, no longer a savior in his own eyes. He was simply a shepherd, lost to the world, but not forgotten by God. The years passed like the shifting of desert sands. The Pharaoh who sought Moses' life was dead, but a new Pharaoh reigned, and the bondage of the Israelites grew only more bitter. Their groaning ascended to the heavens, and God heard them. He remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And God looked upon the children of Israel, and God knew their suffering. Moses, now a man of 80 years, was leading his flock to the far side of the wilderness, to Horeb, the mountain of God. There, A sight arrested his gaze, a vision that defied the laws of nature. An angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. Moses thought, I will turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him from the midst of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses, the shepherd, the fugitive, was no longer the confident prince. He said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? He was filled with doubt, his past failures weighing heavily upon him. God answered, But I will be with you. Moses persisted, seeking a name for this awesome power. If I come to the people of Israel and say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, What is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, Say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Still Moses hesitated. But behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, The Lord did not appear to you. The Lord said to him, What is that in your hand? He said, A staff. And he said, Throw it on the ground. So he threw it on the ground, and it became a serpent, and Moses ran from it. But the Lord said to Moses, Put out your hand and catch it by the tail. So he put out his hand and caught it, and it became a staff in his hand. More signs were given, yet Moses' fear remained. O my Lord, I am not eloquent, either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue. Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, Is there not Aaron, your brother, the Levite? I know that he can speak well. He is coming out to meet you, and when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you both what to do. And so the reluctant prophet obeyed. He returned to Egypt, the staff of God in his hand. He and Aaron gathered the elders of Israel and performed the signs, and the people believed. Then Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, Let my people go. But Pharaoh, a man whose heart was a fortress of pride, sneered. Who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and moreover, I will not let Israel go. And he increased their burdens, a cruel answer to their plea for freedom. The people turned on Moses, their hope curdled into despair. And Moses returned to the Lord, his spirit crushed. O Lord, why have you done evil to this people? Why did you ever send me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you have not delivered them at all. And the Lord said to Moses, Now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh. The stage was set for a contest not between men, but between the God of the Hebrews and the gods of Egypt. The Lord said to Moses, See, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet. You shall speak all that I command you. The first confrontation was in the court of Pharaoh. Aaron cast down his staff, and it became a serpent. But Pharaoh summoned his wise men and sorcerers, and they also, by their secret arts, cast down their staffs, and they became serpents. A moment of seeming parody. But then Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. It was a sign, a foreshadowing of the power that would consume all of Egypt's might. Yet Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he would not listen. The warnings gave way to judgments. Moses and Aaron went to the Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt. In the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, Aaron struck the water with the staff, and all the waters in the river turned to blood. The fish died, the river stank, and the Egyptians could not drink its water. For 7 days, blood flowed where life once had. The magicians of Egypt did the same with their secret arts, a pale imitation of divine power, and it was enough for the king. Pharaoh's heart remained stubborn. He would not let the people go. Then came the second plague. The Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, 'Thus says the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me. But if you refuse, I will plague all your country with frogs.'" Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters, and frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. They were in the houses, in the bedrooms, in the ovens. Pharaoh, desperate, summoned Moses and Aaron. "Plead with the Lord to take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go." But when there was a respite, Pharaoh hardened his heart once more and did not keep his word. The third plague came without warning. Aaron struck the dust of the earth, and it became gnats on man and beast. The magicians tried to produce gnats by their secret arts, but they could not. They confessed to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." But Pharaoh would not listen. Then came swarms of flies, a devouring horde that filled the houses of the Egyptians. But the land of Goshen, where the Israelites lived, was untouched. A distinction was made. Pharaoh bargained, but his promises were empty. The fifth plague struck the livestock. A severe pestilence fell upon the horses, the donkeys, the camels, the herds, and the flocks of Egypt. They died in the fields. But of the livestock of the Israelites, not one died. Still, Pharaoh's heart was hardened. The sixth plague brought boils. Moses took soot from a kiln and threw it in the air before Pharaoh, and it became fine dust over all the land of Egypt, causing festering boils to break out on man and beast. The magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils, and the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. The seventh plague was a terror from the sky. The Lord sent thunder and hail, and fire ran down to the earth. The hail struck down everything that was in the field, both man and beast, and it shattered every tree. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, was there no hail. A terrified Pharaoh confessed, "This time I have sinned. The Lord is in the right, and I and my people are in the wrong." He promised freedom, but when the storm ceased, his pride returned. The eighth plague was a creeping carpet of devastation. An east wind brought locusts, which covered the face of the land, so that the land was darkened. They ate every plant of the land, all the fruit of the trees that the hail had left. Not a green thing remained. Again, Pharaoh pleaded. Again, his repentance was fleeting. The ninth plague was a palpable darkness. For 3 days, a thick darkness fell over all the land of Egypt, a darkness that could be felt. The Egyptians could not see one another, nor could anyone rise from his place for 3 days. But all the people of Israel had light in their dwellings. Pharaoh, in a rage, made one final foolish bargain, but Moses stood firm. And the king, his patience exhausted, his power humiliated, uttered a fatal decree. "Get away from me. Take care never to see my face again, for on the day you see my face, you shall die." And Moses replied with solemn finality, "As you say, I will not see your face again." One final terrible judgment remained. The final confrontation was at hand. The Lord spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, which was still shrouded in a supernatural dread. "Yet one plague more I will bring upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterward he will let you go from here. When he lets you go, he will drive you away completely." The command that followed was solemn and precise, a ritual of salvation in the midst of impending doom. It was to be a night of remembrance for all generations. Each Israelite household was to take a lamb, a perfect lamb without blemish. They were to slaughter it at twilight, and take some of the blood, and put it on the 2 doorposts and the lintel of the houses in which they ate. They were to eat the flesh that night, roasted on the fire, with unleavened bread and bitter herbs, eating in haste, with their belts fastened, their sandals on their feet, and their staff in their hand. "It is the Lord's Passover," God declared. "For I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And on all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am the Lord. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and no plague will befall you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt." The people of Israel bowed their heads and worshipped. They went and did as the Lord had commanded. At midnight a dreadful silence fell, and then it was shattered. The Lord struck down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the captive in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the livestock. There was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where someone was not dead. The arrogant king was broken. He summoned Moses and Aaron by night and said, "Up, go out from among my people, both you and the people of Israel, and go serve the Lord, as you have said. Take your flocks and your herds, as you have said, and be gone, and bless me also." The Egyptians urged the people to leave, to hurry out of the land, for they said, "We are all dead men." The Israelites, numbering about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children, journeyed from Ramesses to Sukkot. They had lived in Egypt for 430 years, and on this very day the armies of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. But the freedom won was not yet secure. As the memory of the horror faded, Pharaoh's hardened heart regretted his decision. "What is this we have done, that we have let Israel go from serving us?" He made ready his chariot and took his army with him, 600 chosen chariots, and all the other chariots of Egypt, with officers over all of them. The pillar of cloud that led the Israelites by day moved and stood behind them, a shield of divine mystery, while the pillar of fire gave light by night. The Egyptian army closed in, trapping the terrified people against the vast expanse of the Red Sea. Panic seized the Israelites. They cried out to Moses, "Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness?" But Moses, his faith a rock in the sea of their fear, declared, "Fear not, stand firm, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be still." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Lift up your staff, and stretch out your hand over the sea, and divide it, that the people of Israel may go through the sea on dry ground." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. The people of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them into the sea, but the Lord threw their army into a panic. He clogged their chariot wheels, so that they drove heavily. The Egyptians cried, "Let us flee from Israel, for the Lord fights for them." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, that the water may come back upon the Egyptians." Moses stretched out his hand, and the sea returned to its normal course. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh. Not one of them remained. Israel saw the great power that the Lord had used against the Egyptians, and the people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. Having passed through the crucible of the sea, The people of Israel entered the vast and unforgiving wilderness of Shur. The triumphant songs of deliverance soon faded, replaced by the grumbling of thirst and hunger. For 3 days they found no water, and when they came to Marah, the water was too bitter to drink. The people murmured against Moses, "What shall we drink?" Their memory of miracles was short, their faith as shallow as a desert stream. Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. There, God tested them, making for them a statute and a rule, promising that if they would diligently listen to his voice, he would put none of the diseases on them that he had put on the Egyptians. He was the Lord, their healer. But the lesson was hard learned. As they journeyed onward, their provisions ran out. They grumbled again, their hearts turning back to the land of their slavery. "Would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt," they lamented, "when we sat by the meat pots and ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Their words were a profound betrayal, a rejection of the very freedom for which they had been delivered. Yet the Lord's mercy was patient. He said to Moses, "Behold, I am about to rain bread from heaven for you." In the evening, quail came up and covered the camp, and in the morning a layer of dew lay around the camp. When it evaporated, on the face of the wilderness there was a fine, flake-like thing, fine as frost on the ground. The people called it manna. For 40 years this heavenly bread would sustain them. Yet their greatest test and their greatest revelation awaited them. In the 3rd month after their departure, they arrived at the foot of Mount Sinai. The mountain was wreathed in smoke and fire, trembling at the presence of the Almighty. The Lord descended upon it in fire, and the whole mountain quaked greatly. The sound of a trumpet grew louder and louder. The people, terrified, stood at a distance. Moses alone was called to ascend into the thick darkness where God was. Upon that holy peak, God established his covenant with his chosen people. He spoke the 10 Commandments, words of divine law etched into the fabric of creation. "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet." These were not mere rules, but the framework for a holy nation, a kingdom of priests set apart for God. For 40 days and 40 nights, Moses remained on the mountain, receiving the law and the pattern for the tabernacle, a dwelling place for God among his people. He was given 2 tablets of stone, written with the finger of God. But while their leader was in the presence of the divine, the people below grew restless. Their faith, so recently forged in fire and water, crumbled into dust. They gathered around Aaron and demanded, "Up, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." Aaron, weak-willed and fearful, complied. He collected their golden earrings and fashioned a molten calf, an idol, a profane echo of the gods of Egypt. "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt," they declared, and they offered sacrifices and reveled in their rebellion. The Lord saw their betrayal, and his anger burned. "Go down," he told Moses, "for your people, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves." He offered to destroy them and make of Moses a great nation. But Moses, the shepherd of his people, interceded. He pleaded with God, reminding him of his promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. He stood in the breach for a stiff-necked people. Descending the mountain, the stone tablets in hand, he saw the calf and the dancing. His own anger blazed. He threw the tablets down at the foot of the mountain, and they shattered. He burned the calf, ground it to powder, scattered it on the water, and made the people drink it a bitter taste of their own sin. He had saved them from God's wrath, but their journey toward holiness had only just begun. The broken tablets were a stark symbol of a broken covenant. Yet God's mercy endured. He commanded Moses to cut 2 new tablets of stone, like the first, and to ascend the mountain once more. There the Lord renewed his covenant, proclaiming his own name before Moses. The Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. When Moses came down from the mountain, his face shone with a terrifying, holy light, a reflection of the glory he had witnessed, and he had to veil his face before the people. The tabernacle was built, the priesthood established, and the intricate laws of sacrifice and purity were given. The nation of Israel was being forged. After a year at Sinai, the pillar of cloud lifted, signaling the time to march toward the land of promise. They came to Kadesh Barnea, on the very border of Canaan. From there, Moses sent 12 spies, 1 from each tribe, to scout the land. For 40 days they explored it, and they returned bearing a cluster of grapes, so large it had to be carried on a pole between 2 men. "It truly flows with milk and honey," they reported. But 10 of the spies brought back a fearful account. "The people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. We seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them." Their report spread like a plague of fear through the camp. Only 2 spies, Joshua and Caleb, held fast to faith. "The land is an exceedingly good land," they cried. "Do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. The Lord is with us. Do not fear them." But the people would not listen. They wept and wailed, turning against Moses and Aaron. "Let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt." Their rebellion was complete. They had rejected not only the land, but the God who had promised it to them. The glory of the Lord appeared, and his judgment was swift and terrible. He declared that this faithless generation would not enter his rest. For every day the spies were in the land, they would wander a year in the wilderness. For 40 years they would bear their iniquity, until the last of their generation had fallen in the desert. Only their children, and the 2 faithful spies, Joshua and Caleb, would see the promised land. The sentence was passed. A generation was condemned to die in the sand. The years that followed were a long, weary pilgrimage. The people learned obedience through hardship. Their grumbling often met with judgment. Korah, a Levite, led a rebellion against the authority of Moses and Aaron, claiming that all the congregation was holy. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed him and his followers alive, a terrifying display of divine order. Even Moses, the great leader, would falter. At the waters of Meribah, when the people once again cried out for water, the Lord told Moses to speak to a rock, and it would yield water. But Moses, his patience worn thin by decades of their complaining, struck the rock twice with his staff in anger. Water gushed forth, but he had disobeyed. He had not honored God as holy before the people. And so the Lord spoke to him and Aaron, "Because you did not believe in me, to uphold me as holy in the eyes of the people of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land that I have given them." It was a heartbreaking decree. The man who had led Israel out of slavery, who had spoken with God face to face, would himself not cross the Jordan. The 40 years drew to a close. The rebellious generation had passed away. A new generation, born in the wilderness and disciplined by the law, stood ready. Aaron died on Mount Hor, and the mantle of the priesthood passed to his son Eleazar. Moses, now 120 years old, his eye not dim nor his vigor abated, knew his own time was near. He gathered the people on the plains of Moab, opposite Jericho, and delivered his final masterful orations. He recounted their history, restated the law, and called them to a choice. See, I have set before you today life and good, death and evil. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore choose life, that you and your offspring may live. He commissioned Joshua as his successor, laying his hands upon him, a transfer of authority in spirit. Be strong and courageous, he told him, for you shall go with this people into the land that the Lord has sworn to their fathers to give them. His work was finished. The shepherd had led his flock to the very edge of the pasture. The final command came from the Lord. Go up this mountain of the Abarim, Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, opposite Jericho, and view the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the people of Israel for a possession, and die on the mountain which you ascend. There was no protest, no plea for reprieve. Moses, the humble servant of God, obeyed. He bid farewell to the people he had carried in his heart for 40 years, the nation he had forged from a tribe of slaves. He pronounced a final blessing upon each of the 12 tribes, a poetic prophecy of their future, his voice filled with the weight of history and the light of eternity. Then alone, he began his ascent. He climbed the slopes of Nebo to the top of Pisgah, leaving behind the camp, the people, and the world. From that high vantage point, the Lord showed him the whole land. He showed him Gilead as far as Dan, all Naphtali, the land of Ephraim, and Manasseh, all the land of Judah, as far as the western sea, the Negeb and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees as far as Zoar. It was all there before him, a vast panorama of promise, a land of hills and valleys, green and fertile. This is the land of which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to your descendants. The Lord said to him, I have let you see it with your own eyes, but you shall not go over there. He saw it. He saw the future of his people, the fulfillment of the promise. It was enough. And Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in the valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. But no one knows the place of his burial to this day. A great weeping rose from the plains below. For 30 days the children of Israel mourned for Moses. Their guide, their lawgiver, their intercessor was gone. A great silence fell where his mighty voice had once declared the statutes of God. Thus ended the journey of the flawed hero, the chosen one. He was a man who fled into the desert in fear, yet returned to confront an empire. He was a man slow of speech, who spoke the very words of God. He was a man of great passion, whose anger could flash like lightning, but whose love for his people could stand against the judgment of the Almighty. He led a nation through seas and deserts, bearing their complaints and their betrayals with a shepherd's patience. He brought them the law that would define them, and brought them to the edge of the home they had longed for. He was denied the final prize of entry, a solemn reminder that even the greatest of prophets are but human vessels, subject to the perfect will of God. There has not arisen a prophet since in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face for all the signs and wonders that the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt to Pharaoh, and to all his servants and to all his land, and for all the mighty power and all the great deeds of terror that Moses did in the sight of all Israel. His story is not merely a chronicle of history, but a testament to the power of faith against impossible odds, a lesson in leadership and sacrifice, and a timeless narrative of bondage deliverance and the arduous sacred journey toward a promise. His life stands as a monument, a declaration that one person, surrendered to a divine calling, can indeed change the course of the world. Thank you for listening to this story.